So let's say you have your store, it's all set up. Now it's really about doing the actual grunt work of shipping out your items. Packaging and shipping, whatever amount of time you think it takes, multiply that by like 2 or 3 times, and that's how long it'll actually take to pack or ship something. I don't know what it is, but it like takes a really long time. Take it from all of us. We're all tired of shipping. So if you're coming in from like an artist alley, if somebody buys a charm, you might just give like the charm, on its own. It might come in just like a really simple plastic bag. If you are selling an item and you're shipping it through the mail, it is generally a good idea to have some kind of packaging. And that is because it makes a good impression. If you're at a con, you're personally purchasing from the artist. The artist is doing customer service. Like, they're working. And so they make a specific impression. But if you're buying things online, you can't make that personal connection. And so if you have even just a little bit of product packaging, I think it goes a really long way. I have a picture of some of the packaging that I had for some of my charms and keychains, and this is like really simple. All I did was I took pretty patterned like cardstock or construction paper. I just cut them into pieces and I like taped like with washi tape the keychains or the charms onto the construction paper, and I put it in like these cute packaging bags. So these packaging bags you can always find on like eBay or Amazon, sometimes Etsy can be a little bit more expensive. That lace doily that you see on that packaging, that's part of the bag, like it's printed on the bag. So it is pretty easy to be like cute with packaging. This is like very dependent on your artwork and on your art style and everything like that. And so I'm not going to go that deeply into it, but if you go online and type like artist alley packaging, you get like a lot of example of different people doing different kinds of packaging. The only other thing I will mention that it is a good idea to match your branding. So it's not necessary, and I don't always follow it. I think it's a good idea to keep in mind if you want to be like really good with your branding. Moving on from actual packaging of the items, I want to talk about extras. I'm talking about things that go into a package that the customer didn't necessarily pay for. So this can be as like really simple. You can like just have a smiley face on like the package on like the outside. I've put like stickers on mine. You can hand write a thank you note. If you have a business card, that's a really good thing to kind of add it into your package. All of these things are meant to have a lasting impression on that customer. And when customers buy from you online, there's no personal interaction. And so having these kind of little extras like doodles, thank yous, and stuff like that makes it like a little bit more personable. And of course, it's not something that's necessary, but I think it is something that will make a big difference. And I personally feel better about my package when I think I have put like my gratitude into it. And if you're feeling extra generous, for example, if your customer, had a really big order, or maybe they left you like a really heartfelt note or something, and you want to show a little bit more gratitude, it's definitely okay to send them like little low cost items like buttons, free stickers, bookmarks, and it's really all about making an impression and thanking the customer for their purchase. If you're at a convention and you buy an item, it's more or less an impulse buy. Like, you go to the convention knowing that you're going to go to the artist alley, you're going to buy something. You're kind of in a mindset where like, oh my gosh, I kind of want to shop around and look at all this stuff. And so it is frankly easier to buy at a convention. If you're online and you see something that you kind of want to buy, you have a lot more time to think about it. It's going to be there for maybe, a couple days, couple hours, even a month. You might even forget about it sometimes, like after having seen it. And so for me, it is a big deal when a customer does buy from you online, because it's not like they're looking at it and buying it immediately. It's not an impulse buy. It's a buy where they went to your link, they went through the cart, they typed in their shipping information and went through all that and still bought your thing. Maybe I'm making it a bigger deal than it actually is, but I'm very thankful for it when people buy things online. And so I always try to like show that gratitude in like thank you notes and things like that. So now let's talk about actually shipping the items themselves. Here I just have 4 big categories of items that people might be shipping. Some, I guess, tips and tricks getting them ready to go on their journey across the country or across the world or something like that. As a rule of thumb, if your package is going to be traveling very far, it is a good idea to be a little bit more careful with the packaging, give it a little bit more padding, give it a little bit more like backboard or something. If you have prints, 11 by 17 is a little bit pushing it in my opinion, but if you have anything 8.5 by 11 or smaller, you can ship it flat and it'll probably be okay. But usually I will backboard it like crazy. The bigger the piece of paper, the more I'll backboard it. So if I'm setting an 11 by 17, minimum 2 backboards, like front and back, and sandwich it. For those of you who don't know, backing boards are basically like rigid cardboard. You can actually just use cardboard. I've done it that way. They're basically meant to prevent the prints from bending or folding specifically. Another really good point is don't pick a backboard that's exactly the size of your print. Have the backboard a little bit bigger than your print so that when you take your print, put it in like a plastic sleeve and like washi tape it to the backboard, none of the corners stick out so that if there's any impact to the package, the corners of the backboard is going to hit it and it's not going to get all the way to the picture. If you have anything bigger, try to go with a poster tube. The bigger like a flat item is, the easier it is for it to get bent. USPS, they try, but they're not the most careful with stuff. A big print, it's probably going to be really easy to kind of like crumple and squash. Definitely look into poster tubes. So moving on, charms and small items. So I feel like this is most of the stuff that's being purchased and shipped in the Artist Alley community. The best way to ship your item is bubble wrap and bubble wrap envelopes or padded envelopes. So you can have like your little packaging and then just kind of wrap it in like a layer of bubble wrap and then stick it into an envelope. Bubble mailers are your best friends. You can buy them in big packs on Amazon or eBay. Or Uline. Uline's a good one if you're buying like really big bulk. Okay, if you are selling something like zines, books, fan books, anything that is a little bit more rigid but still paper, it is absolutely necessary for you to have some kind of backing board. Books might seem like they are, stronger than prints, for example, but the spine is really easily damaged with a little bit of impact. And so make sure there's backing board. Bubble wrap it. If it's a pretty big book, reinforce the corners. So I would like fold the cardboard over the corners so that the spine and the corners of the book doesn't get damaged, because those are the most easily damaged for a book. So do all that and then stick it into like a big bubble mailer. Again, a lot of bubble wrap. And the last thing is fragile crafts. I personally don't have a whole lot of experience with this. Most of the stuff that I send tend to be pretty flat. But if you have fragile crafts, bubble wrap, styrofoam padding, peanuts, like all of that. And also, I feel like for fragile crafts, it is probably a better idea to have more of a rigid box, because bubble mailers look like they're squishable. Rigid boxes, even like the little ones, they could probably take a little bit of a hit, and as long as it has enough padding on the inside, your craft is probably going to be okay. So I would personally suggest rigid boxes. Again, these are all tips. These are just stuff that I personally have found helpful, or like my friends have found helpful. You can do whatever you want. Okay, when you post your shipping cost on your website, your shipping cost is not just the cost of your shipping label. For example, a 2-ounce first class bubble mailer, I think is around $2.70. You should not put $2.70 as your shipping cost. When you are shipping the item, but you not only have the cost of that shipping label, it also costs money to buy the packaging. For example, you ship an item, and the shipping label costs $2.70. A bubble mailer, the cost of the tape, maybe it takes you like 10 minutes to pack the item. So these are all costs that need to be part of that shipping cost in addition to that $2.70. It's not a whole lot. Make sure that you are at the very least rounding up. So I usually just round up. If the shipping cost is like $2.50 or something, they might round up to like $3 or $3.50 to kind of cover for that packaging cost and the handling fees. That's really up to you, but just make sure you're not like eating costs that you don't want to or something like that. So, okay. So now moving on to the nitty-gritty of the shipping. A lot of this information is going to be for the United States Postal Service. I've only ever shipped in the US, so I can't say anything for people who are shipping from different countries and stuff like that. So USPS is the main one that I'm going to be talking about. The cost of shipping with either FedEx or UPS is usually a lot higher. They are really meant for like businesses and people who are shipping like heavy things and stuff like that. They're not really meant for shipping small items the way like indie artists do. So continuing on, there are 4 main types of shipping classes that USPS has. So there's first class, priority mail, medium mail, and ground shipping, which is also known as parcel select. First class and priority mail are going to be your main shippers, and then medium mail will be very useful for very specific sellers or very specific applications. Ground shipping, you're really not going to use unless your products are like really heavy, in which case you might actually want to consider looking into FedEx or UPS as well just to compare prices. Usually for small items and things like charms or like notebooks and things like that, the first 3 are going to be the main ones. Okay, let's talk about first class. There's actually 2 categories within first class. There's first class mail and there's first class package. First class mail is basically your, I guess, quintessential mail. You have like a greeting card, let's say, and then you stick like a stamp on it and you can set it up. That is first class mail. It is the cheapest way to send anything. There are obviously some rules. The biggest one is that the item can only be maximum of a quarter thick, and it has to have an even thickness and be flat. It used to be that a lot of people would kind of try to wiggle around the rules and try to ship charms by like taping it to a paperboard and then shipping it in an envelope like that. As far as I understand, USPS started to crack down a lot more on that, and so now really the only things that you can ship in first class mail this way are things like stickers, postcards, really thin signs that are like saddle stitched or like stapled. The really important thing to note is that there is no tracking. You don't know if it's arrived, you don't know where it is on the journey. So if you are using this first class mail option, what I would suggest you to do is go to the post office, go to the front desk, and when you give them the envelope, ask them if they can if you can take a picture of the envelope with their date stamps. That can only be done at the post office. And so it becomes proof that you have actually shipped the item. Otherwise, because there's no tracking, there's actually no proof that you've sent the item out. But it is, again, very cheap. And even if you're shipping like internationally at like 13 ounces, I think the maximum is $3. But again, there's no tracking. And also, I would suggest that if you do have this available as an option, that you actually write it in your shipping options information. Just make sure if for first class mail that it does say no tracking included, just so that the customer is aware. And that's really important because all of the other shipping options actually come with tracking. Summary, first class mail, really good if you are shipping really small, specifically paper items. Very, very cheap, really cool, but no tracking. Okay, so let's talk about first class package. First class package is basically little packages. The limits for first class package is that it can only go up to 1 pound, so 16 ounces. So it's really meant for like small items. If you're sending things like a charm, I think one charm is maybe 1 ounce, 2 ounces. First class packages usually will ship anywhere domestic for 2 to 5 days. Hawaii and Alaska is completely different. But if I'm shipping from like the East Coast to the West Coast, maybe 4 or 5 days. It does include tracking, and it is, I think, relatively cheap. So the cheapest that you can ship this kind of package is about $2.66 for, I think, under 4 ounces or under 8 ounces, something like that, is $2.66. At 1 pound, it'll be $4.94. So it's cheap. This is really the workhorse for the artist community. Most people just send things in first class package because most of the stuff that we sell is really small. Now let's talk about priority. So first class package and first class mail, we're looking at about a little less than a week to maybe about a week of shipping, again, domestically. If you want it faster, or if you go over 16 ounces, then you are going into priority mail. So there are two main ways, and oh gosh, that's a typo. One of them is by weight and one of them is flat rate. So let's talk about by weight first. So what that means is that the cost of the shipping will depend on how heavy your items are. And so if you have a package that's just a little bit too heavy for first class package, then this is perfect. Just calculate it by weight, and it starts at around $7.20. Priority mail is a little bit faster, so it will get anywhere domestically between 2 to 3 days. It does come with tracking, and it also includes $50 of insurance automatically, which is really nice if you have anything that is prone to breaking. Again, $7.20 if you're starting at 1 pound. At about 5 pounds, it becomes about $10.65. But if you start getting heavier, it's actually better to work with what they call the priority mail flat rate box. And that's the second way that they calculate cost for priority mail. The basics of it is the same. It still takes about 2 to 3 days. It still comes with tracking. It still has $50 of insurance, but USPS will give you like a pre-made box, and it says USPS priority mail or something like that. Those boxes are free. You can pick them up at your local post office. You can actually have them shipped to you for free, and you can ship whatever you can fit in that box, and you will pay one flat rate. That's why they're called flat rate box. So they have small sizes, medium sizes, and large sizes. Small ones are about $7.20. The medium, I think, is about 13 something, and then the large one is about $18.90. This is really great for when you're shipping something that's like really dense and really heavy. And so what I would do is to try to weigh how much your package would be, and then compare prices to see if it would be better for you to ship it by calculating by weight or in some kind of flat rate box. If it's something light but takes up a lot of space, like a sweatshirt or something, shipping it by weight is going to be a little bit cheaper. A couple things to note about the flat rate boxes. You cannot put anything on the outside of the flat rate box except for like addresses. I've drawn like smiley faces before, like that's okay. But I did once where when I was sending like Christmas packages, I wanted it to look like a present. So I gift wrapped the priority boxes, and they said you can't actually do that. So I had to rip it apart at the post office, which was kind of sad. The other thing is that you can actually deform the boxes, kind of, as long as it actually closes in on itself. So for example, if you have like an 11 by 17 print, you can actually, instead of like folding the box into a square, you can keep it flat. If you're not sure if your package is going to be okay, I would just check with your local USPS office. But for me, as long as the box closes in on itself, I haven't had any issues. I think I mentioned before that first class and priority mail is going to be your two main ways of shipping your items. There is also a third option that is really useful for specific packages called media mail. You can only send very specific items, and it was basically meant to be for books. So books are deceptively heavy. It is a little bit slower than first class, so it takes about 3 to 7 days domestically, depending on where you are. It does come with tracking, and again, it is much cheaper than priority. So at 1 pound, remember priority was about $7. Medium mail is about $2 or $2.66. It is a pretty significant difference and works great as long as your package is the right items. So again, it is meant for books. You can also ship things like CDs, I think. Basically, any kind of educational goods are okay. But if you start adding in other items, so for example, even if you add like a thank you note, if you wanted to ship a book and a charm together, you can't do that. The moment you have that thank you note or the charm, it becomes not medium mail worthy. In order to enforce that, USPS will actually randomly select and do the check. They'll like actually open it, and they have the right to do that. Just be aware of that. I will say that usually small packages don't get checked. Usually they're specifically looking at like some of the bigger packages, but don't break the law, guys. So books are okay with media mail. So if I'm sending like hardcover notebooks, I'll usually send it by media mail. Okay, let's move on to the last one, which is Parcel Select. So Parcel Select is supposed to be basically the cheap, slow, and bulky shipping option for USPS. It is really nice if you have to ship something real big and heavy, but it is only worth it if you have something big and heavy. Otherwise, I've never had to use it. I really doubt like any artist alley kind of people will ever have to use it, but I just thought I should mention it for people who, one day you like have to ship something big and you need something. Okay, so those are the four main ones. I just want to kind of summarize the main first three that I talked about. So again, first class, specifically for packages, it takes about 2 to 5 days. Limit is up to 1 pound. Ranges from $2.70 to about $5. This is what most of your packages are going to be sent through. Priority mail is really fast, really safe, takes about 2 to 3 days. It's always insured, starts at about $7.20. And the last one, medium mail, is great for zines and notebooks. Takes a little bit longer, and you can't mix other items, but it is a lot cheaper and starts at $2.66. Okay, now everything that I've talked about so far has been domestic shipping. And so I do want to talk about international shipping. I will say, if you're just starting out with your store, you don't have to sell internationally. Like, I think when I first started, for the first maybe 6 months, I didn't take any international orders just because there's a lot more going on with international orders in terms of like customs and fees and stuff like that. You can set it on your store to not take orders from overseas. But for those of you who are interested, I do want to talk about it a little bit. I did cross out medium mail because medium mail is a domestic only shipping class. You really only have first class, package, or priority. For first class, if you're shipping it, depending on where the destination is, it'll take anywhere between 7 days to 20 days. So I've had packages to Canada or like England, especially for whatever reason, is really fast. Those usually take about 7 days. If you're sending it to Australia, that will take about a month. Asia and Australia usually takes a really long time. Remember, for domestic, the limit was actually 1 pound. Well, for international, the limit increases to 4 pounds, which is really nice. One of the important things to note about shipping internationally is that it's only partially tracked. And by that, I mean it's tracked within the United States. You'll know when it leaves the United States and you'll know when it lands in the other country. But once it enters their customs and their country, you won't know where it is. It's not tracked all the way to your customer's door. It's just tracked to the country that you're sending it to. But it does have a number, so it does still offer proof that you've actually sent the package and everything. For Canada, it starts at around $9.50. If you're shipping it overseas further than that, it's generally about $13. It varies like slightly between like Europe versus Australia, but it's generally around $13 and then it goes up from there. So for priority shipping, this one is fully tracked, which means that you will see it all the way to the customer's door. It is a lot faster, takes about 5 to 10 days usually. You can still use flat rate boxes. If you're shipping it to Canada, it starts at $32. If you're shipping it elsewhere, it starts at $47. So again, really expensive to ship internationally, but unfortunately that's really all we have. FedEx and UPS is more expensive usually, so okay, we can start talking about how to actually set up your shipping cost in the store. If you are at a regular e-commerce site, like, Etsy, Store NB, Wix, what you will first have to do is set up shipping zones. So this will be basically different areas in the world that have the same cost. If the customer is from the United States, you use this set of rules. And if the customer is from Europe, then maybe this is the cost. Usually people will use 3 zones, so domestic, Canada, and everywhere else. And then within each shipping zone, you'll have to set up different shipping services. So if you want to offer first class and priority, then you have like domestic, and then within the domestic you'll have first class and priority that the customer can choose. Calculating shipping can be a nightmare with medium mail. If you're just starting out, stick to first class parcel and priority mail. Okay, and the last thing that you'll have to do, you'll have to set up item weights. Like for every item that you have in your store, you should set how much that item is. So if you have a charm, you can be like, this charm is 1 ounce, or this charm is 2 ounces, or something like that. When the customer buys like 1 charm or like 10 charms, then the e-commerce store will have a way of calculating how much this package is and then what the corresponding cost of that shipping is. It is easy for first class parcel and priority. If it's first class, you just have to set a limit. If it's priority, you just let the weight calculate itself and things like that. If you don't know what to put in your shipping costs when you are setting up your store, use your local post office shipping calculator. USPS has one. Make sure that you use that for every single possible kind of iteration of package that you think you might send. So if it's 2 ounces, make sure you know how much it'll be. If it's 10 ounces, make sure you know how much it'll be. So once you've set all of this up, what I would personally recommend is to have a soft open, which means that your store is technically open to the public, but you don't announce it anywhere. And then try to check out a bunch of items and make sure that the shipping costs make sense so that you're not overcharging or undercharging. I will say you will have to do a little bit of trial and error. Like I personally have had a lot of cases where I undercharged so much and I had to take a cut, but it's all a learning experience. I do want to talk a little bit in detail about setting up the different shipping services and the item weights, especially like I mentioned, because it's really complicated for first class letter and medium mail. Okay, so for setting up shipping zones, so again, my store is on Wix, and so this UI is from Wix, but I thought it kind of shows what I'm trying to say here, which is that you can set some kind of weight range and then the rate for that weight range. So I have it set from 0 to 0.3 pounds. If the customer's package is that much, then it costs them $3. If it's between 0.3 and 0.7, then it'll cost them $4. Again, first class package is limited to 1 pound, and so after 1 pound, I have it set to 7.5, which is actually the cost of a priority. If they have a package that is too heavy, I would still be able to ship their package. Now, if you're looking at first class letter mail, you are going to have to do something a little bit similar. So you'll probably have to have really, really light weight limits, and then make sure that whatever cannot belong in first class letter packaging is heavier than that. So for example, if you have a charm, you should probably set it to 0.1 pound or something like that. So if the customer adds a charm in their cart, then it's automatically not applicable to the first class letter cost, if that makes sense. This is the most complicated part of setting up a store. And so once you have these kind of shipping weight ranges and rates, for setting up this weights here, if you have something that is worthy of shipping as flat mails, then you are probably going to have to set your item to be really light, at like 0.01, so it falls in this category. If they did want tracking, they could still use this one, but this is available to them. If you have something that's like a charm, then it needs to be heavier than this upper limit here, so it would fall into this category so that you're not undercharging for this item. For medium mail, what I do is, because medium mail is about $3 up to a pound, what I do is, regardless of how much this notebook actually weighs, I will set this weight to be just under this maximum weight for $3. So if they only buy this notebook, then they can just pay $3 shipping and I can send it medium mail. If they do a notebook and a charm, then it automatically pushes them up to a different cost range. This is really trial and error for the artist, but I would definitely recommend just going to like incognito tab and then like checking products out of your own store and making sure that the shipping costs are going to be accurate. I hope that made kind of sense. Again, setting up weights and shipping costs is probably the most complicated part of online sales. So, okay, now if you're paying for shipping, if you're in the US, there's two main ways you can do it. You can go to the postal office and either use their self-service machine or their front desk, or you can buy shipping labels at home and then print them out and then tape it or something onto your package. The post office is really nice because the people at the front desk are going to be able to answer all of your questions. I will say that if you use the front desk, it's a little bit more expensive, and also there is kind of a limit of packages you can send this way. And the reason is because if you're at USPS, there's probably people behind you that are also waiting to ship their own packages. And so if you come in with like 20 packages and you're doing them one at a time, I've heard cases where like they'll say like, okay, well, let's do 5, and then you have to get back in line and then wait until it's your turn again. If you're at home, that's the way I do it. You basically can purchase these shipping labels online by providing return address, sending address, the weight of your package, and then you can buy it online through like PayPal or credit card or something. Some sites, some e-commerce sites have the shipping incorporated in the site. For example, Etsy is one where you can buy the shipping labels directly on Etsy. You can also buy it from like a third party. So I use a site called Shipping Easy, which is free to use up until I think 50 labels is when you start need to pay like extra membership. If no matter what kind of e-commerce site you use, if you get income through PayPal, you can definitely buy shipping labels through PayPal as well. Those are a little bit cheaper than going to like the USPS. If you do print your own labels, you can leave those packages either at like one of those blue mailboxes that the USPS comes to pick up, or you can go to the post office to drop off packages. You can also have them pick it up. Technically, you're supposed to submit like a pickup request for packages. My post office guy was really nice, and every time he saw a package outside the door, he would just grab it for me. So it really depends. Okay. International forms. So you're going to have to fill out a customs form. Whenever you're shipping something internationally, it counts as an import or an export. And so because of that, the government needs to know exactly what you're shipping and how much it is. This is kind of the information that you'll have to fill out. First of all, you'll have to tell them what kind of package it is. So is it a gift? Is it like a commercial sample? Usually if we're talking about artist alley, we're talking about, merchandise, actual things that you have received money for. So that's what you're going to check. There are some cases where like a customer will be like, oh, can you please check the gift? And the reason they'll do that is if your package category falls under a gift, that means that it is usually not checked for any kind of taxes or import fees. Now, it's illegal because that's technically lying since you have got money. You should check merchandise. If you do check gifts, it's really hard to enforce. It's kind of up to you, I guess, in the end. Another second information that you'll need to have is product information. Here it says a detailed description of contents, the quantity of that content, weight of each thing, and then value in US dollars of what the item is. So, for example, if you're shipping a keychain, it would be like accessory keychain for the description of the content. If you're shipping two, for example, you would write two. If you're shipping one, you would just write one. How much it weighs, maybe like 1 or 2 ounces per charm usually. And then a value. So if you sold it for like $10, you're supposed to write $10. At the end, it'll ask you to total the weight and the value of the item. So that's what you'll do. And then, of course, you'll need some kind of send to and return to address. Another thing that's kind of specific to international forms is that you should have a phone number. And that phone number is basically a way for the government to communicate with the customer if they do need to pay for customs tax. And then finally, this isn't something that you'll need to fill out, but you will receive this number at the bottom, which is a customs number. And so this is like an information number. It's essentially the same thing as a tracking number. It just has a little bit more information. But this will basically track within the United States, and it will also tell you if it arrived at the destination country. I will mention, if your customer is hit with a customs tax, that is not your problem. That is definitely something that the customer is going to have to pay because it is an import tax. I would suggest you write that in the shipping information on your store. Don't feel like you have to pay for people's customs tax, because that is not something that you're supposed to be paying for. It's not like every package will get hit with a customs tax. Usually it's generally like the really big packages, and it doesn't happen that often. Like, it's never happened to me. Moving on, shipping mishaps. Things that could go wrong with shipping, because there's a lot of things that can go wrong with shipping. You can have really delayed shipment or like missing shipment. You can have packages that have been damaged in transit, and you can, if you have it internationally, you can have a package held in customs. If it's a missing package, or if it's rerouted, or if like you look at USPS tracking and it's not updating for whatever reason, you can call USPS or go to your local post office and give them the tracking number and then ask them to figure out what happened to it. Usually they'll have a little bit more information. So I've had cases where they're like, oh, we accidentally sent it to Ohio, so we'll tell the USPS people in Ohio to keep an eye out. There's not a whole lot you can do until it has been missing for, I think, like a month or something like that. At that point, you can actually file some kind of complaint with USPS. If an item is damaged in transit, you can ask the customer to take photos of the damaged package and then show it to USPS and file some kind of complaint. Unfortunately, if it's not priority mail, again, priority mail is insured up to $50. But if it's not priority mail, the only thing you're probably going to be able to do is get back the shipping cost. Technically, if something gets damaged or is missing in USPS, it's technically not the seller's fault. Once you've shipped it, you can't control whatever happens to that package. However, it is generally considered good business practice to replace or refund the items, especially if it's small items like charms. Somebody messages me and they tell me that they send me a picture and they're like, charms came damaged or something. Usually I will just send them another one, or if they want a refund, I'll refund them for that. That is up to your own discretion. It's not something that you absolutely have to do. It isn't really your fault that the packages broke, but it's also not the customer's fault either. They just bought, something they were interested in, and they're probably just as sad that it came damaged in the mail. So just kind of keep those things in mind. Okay, so I think that's it for shipping. Yeah.